Investing in the cashew cash crop. Farmers in Enugu State receive over 30,000 seedlings. It's part of a government plan to create more jobs.
Young African leaders from 48 countries attend the Mandela Washington Fellowship Summit. With nearly two-thirds of Africans below the age of 35, it's an opportunity for aspiring leaders to network and prepare for success in Africa and around the globe.
Zimbabwe after Mugabe. With election results still contested, many voters face a combination of high expectations and frustrations. Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello and welcome to Africa 54. It's the show that goes around the continent to bring stories near and far. I'm Chamberlain Uso at Channels Television here in Lagos. I'm joined by Esther Githui-Ewart at Voice of America in Washington.
Thanks, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart at our global headquarters in Washington, D.C. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Let's start off with a look at cashew production in Nigeria. Chamberlain Uso in Lagos brings you that story.
Well, yes, cashew farmers in Enugu State are getting some support from the state government with the distribution of over 30,000 improved seedlings. The farming communities have been dependent on output from cashew production for years, and now the government is supporting them to ensure more success.
Cashew plantations have been in Nigeria for over 400 years after Portuguese traders introduced the crop in the 16th century. Initially growing in the wild for afforestation and erosion control purposes, cashew would later become one of Nigeria's cash crops, and today Nigeria is amongst the world's top 5 producers. Cashew plantations are in virtually every region, serving as a source of food and livelihood, raw materials for industries, and foreign exchange for the nation. Udeni in Enugu State, southeast Nigeria, is one of many cashew-producing communities in the country. Residents started planting around the 1960s, and it quickly became a viable source of income. But times have changed.
I have been in this business for 10 years. I consider it very lucrative, but the problem is lack of funds and low-yield seedlings. All these ones here are not useful anymore. They have become mere wood with little or no yield.
A few kilometers away is the Obolafo market, where stocks of bags filled with nuts are ready for dispatch within and outside the country. The quantity from the farm is reducing by the year because of poor yields from very old trees. Although the profit margin is thinning out, traders are exploring other options, including buying the seeds from other states to keep the business running.
We used to buy a bag for 20,000 naira and sell for 25,000 naira, but that was 6 years ago. This year, the price has gone very high. We now buy for 55,000 naira and sell for 60 or 70,000, depending on the buyer.
The Enugu State government says it has a good knowledge of the situation and gives details of provisions being made for 30,000 improved seedlings with higher yields per hectare and earlier maturity than the local varieties currently being planted.
Apart from replacing the trees, we're also working towards empowering them to also move from manual production to mechanized production, and also from subsistence farming to commercial agriculture, including owning, for instance, 1 hectare, 2 hectares, 3 hectares of land cultivated just cashew.
The new seedlings are to be sold at a subsidized rate of 100 naira to farmers, and will take another 3 to 5 years for the fruits thereof to get to the market. But for now, the government's intervention aims to attract more youths to cashew production and generally encourage more attention on agriculture.
Agriculture stopped being the backbone of Nigeria's economy since petroleum was discovered in the 1950s. Much like Cameroon, its neighbor, which also turned to crude oil in 1978. Both countries have similar cash and food crops such as cocoa, rubber, and bananas. But perhaps the similarity with the most impact is the shared borders through which many southern Cameroonians have fled violence following government crackdown on separatists calling for secession. Tanda Theophilos is a fellow at the International Crisis Group who has spent weeks gauging the atmosphere in both regions of Central African nation, which is also his home country. He joins us from Nairobi, Kenya. Welcome to the program, Mr. Theophilos. Let me start by asking you now, Cameroon's dual colonial experience, courtesy of the French and British rule, is quite distinct from what was or what is in some other African countries. What can you tell us is the impact this joint colonialism had on the people after independence?
Thank you very much. The joint colonialism, or we can go beyond Britain and France to bring in Germany, that was there before Britain and France. However, the partition of Cameroon after the departure of Germany created two sets of people with different ways of life, different ways of looking at things, different legal systems, different administrative system, different educational system, and two different languages at least at independence. And that has been a very difficult issue for Cameroon to handle since independence.
Would you say then that enough is being done to address those challenges?
Enough is not being done. Our crisis group has always said the ultimate will to resolve the crisis is an inclusive dialogue. Until date, since the rise of the separatist groups, the government has not taken concrete steps to actually solve the problem through inclusive dialogue. Dialogue is everybody having a say in what is at hand.
Well, clearly, they may have a chance to get their voices heard because it's barely 2 months to the general elections scheduled for October. Yet, there are fears of more violence. Are you as worried?
I am even very worried. And it is almost that there will be violence. From September, there will be rising violence. Why do I say so? Separatists have said there will be no elections in the predominantly Anglophone regions. And they will keep to their words. They will struggle to disrupt the elections. And they have said that anybody who attempts to vote will be killed. That means a lot. Elections will take place on the 7th of October. Before the 7th of October, you have the 1st of October, which is the day they consider as their day of independence. And as usual, they will struggle to go to the streets. And so it is very possible, very likely that there will be violence.
Well, yes, we know you've spoken about the need for them to dialogue. But as a citizen yourself, what do you think is the most important thing that needs to be done or demonstrated such that they can get the confidence of the people right away?
The most important thing that needs to be done now is that the government should reassure the people by granting amnesty to those they have issued warrants of arrest for. They should liberate all those who have been jailed in relation to the crisis. Then the people will feel the government has the will to negotiate or to dialogue.
All right then, Tanda Theophilos, fellow at the International Crisis Group. Thank you for talking to us today on Africa 54.
It's my pleasure.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54 and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, in the fight against malaria and cholera in Adamawa State, volunteers clean up the environment. And is communal living in previously violence-torn areas also part of the answer?